In this episode, we'll examine the big churn in India's neighborhood with a special focus on Bangladesh and Nepal.
Today, we can't say that the entire region is monolithic.
So, I think they do understand the value of India, but at the same time, over the years, we've also seen, the kind of support that China's lent them.
I don't think Chinese are looking for making satellite. Chinese are buying influence.
On a daily basis, interdependence, that's India. That the Prime Minister who was ousted during those protests is now actually back in the fray. We have careful ourselves.
The strength of a nation like India comes out when you are able to work with governments where people who are not with you.
Hello and welcome to the CRF podcast Deep Focus. I'm Neha Khanna. In this episode, we'll examine the big churn in India's neighborhood with a special focus on Bangladesh and Nepal. To put it into perspective for us, we're joined on the podcast today by Professor Sreeradha Datta. She teaches at Jindal Global University. We also have with us Lt Gen Rakesh Sharma. He's a distinguished fellow at the Vivekanand International Foundation and Center for Land Warfare Studies. A very warm welcome to both of you. Thank you for joining me. Lieutenant General Sharma, let me begin with you, sir. Looking at the big picture, when we talk about the India growth story and the trajectory of Viksit Bharat, we can't ignore its geography, especially its immediate neighborhood. Now, skeptics say that India's neighborhood first policy has failed to deliver in recent years, that India has somehow lost its neighborhood. How do you look at the situation?
Sonia, thank you for inviting. And the question that you asked is so true. People have been debating this for quite some time. Uh, let me put it this way, that while we say that the entire region, South Asia, has got a similar cultural things, and we have the similar religious handlings, etc., ancestral centuries altogether. But today we can't say that the entire region is monolithic. So when you want to compare, when you say you can't compare Nepal with, say, Sri Lanka and Maldives, because they are different things altogether. So each one of these nations has its own, say, national interest, what they want to do, how they want to have relations. And so Indian relations with each one of our neighbors is actually absolutely different. And so you can't have one, say, policy. So firstly, I want to talk about whether then there is a neighborhood policy which will be relevant to all neighbors of India. That, I think, is not so simple and it cannot be done. We have to have national interest with each one of these countries separately. Second is that we have crests and troughs. We have times when we had very good relations. We had very good relations for 15 years in Bangladesh, and we did not have very good relations in last year and a half or previously with the BNP government. We had good relations at times with Nepal. We didn't have very good relations in between. So there is crests and troughs. It goes as per the governments who take over on the other side and own side. So there is a mixture there. We have very bad times with Sri Lankans, and we have much better times with Sri Lankans today. So there is crests and troughs. So you say a neighborhood policy, a singular neighborhood policy, and all neighbors reconcile their differences and join up with India? Well, no, I don't think that would be a simple proposition to say. So to say that we have failed the neighborhood policy, I don't think it's right to say so. But I think we need to work a lot, and we can debate this issue as to, firstly, large countries get disliked by smaller neighbors. It's by virtue of them being like that. We're such a large country, and we are economically very poorly connected among ourselves. We are very poorly connected.
And often accused of being big brother.
So go to Nepal, they don't like the word big brother. He just said, we are a sovereign country. We are your friends. But don't talk about big brother. So that big brother is also like, in our culture, ek bada bhai, the elder brother is can be a very domineering fellow. So so the point is that we have to handle each one in that manner. You just can't have one singular policy. And last issue here is that any nation that aspires to rise up in the region as an entity, we have aspirations to become a nation with matters in the global committee, has to take the region with it. You can't say that we have a region of countries which are inimical to us. But and then you say you want to have a regional power status, or you want to be power to reckon with. So there are two issues here. You have to handle each country separately, but you still have to take the entire region with you to have a standing among committee of nations. That becomes the issue. And Pakistan becomes a bugbear in the whole issue, where Pakistan drags us down, that become a failure of SARC. We are the only, even African Union works in some manner or the other. The ASEAN is doing much better job. But SARC is a failure, and the other ones, BIMSTEC and BBN, became poor cousins.
Yes.
So, we have a charter cut out to sort out the region, as we say.
And let's face it, we have a difficult neighborhood. There are plenty of challenges on so many fronts, the biggest of them all, as you said, being Pakistan. Professor Datta, let me come to you. Let's talk about Bangladesh. This is a country you understand better than most others. Now, Bangladesh has had a landmark election. Tariq Rahman is the new prime minister. Our prime minister made a swift outreach to him, called him, congratulated him, talked about advancing ties between the two countries. But interestingly, in the run up to the election, when Tariq Rahman was asked about ties with India, he said, the interest of Bangladesh and its people will determine our foreign policy. So it's very clear that Tariq Rahman's Bangladesh First policy aims to balance that country's ties with neighbors like India, China, and Pakistan. How do you view some of the statements that he's made in the recent past, and what do you think that means for the future of India-Bangladesh relations?
I think it makes sense that a leader of a nation says my country first. So Bangladesh first is not unexpected, but Bangladesh balancing the powers is also not new. For ever since, let's say, 1991, when they became an electoral democracy. Since then, we've seen they worked very closely with China. Um, USA to some sorts. India, of course, was a close partner, and I think there are many more statements along the way, and even during the elections campaign, that they once in a while mentioned India, very rarely, of course, but always in a very positive spirit, saying that it's the largest neighbor for us, and even individually, whenever I've met BLP leaders as well as Jamaat leaders, they have said that India is the largest neighbor, most important neighbor, and I kept asking them, "It's okay for me to quote you guys, right?" So I think they do understand the value of India. But at the same time, over the years, we've also seen, the kind of support that China's lent them in terms of the infrastructure support, developmental partnership. Japan's doing very well with them also. The Matabari port, hopefully another couple of years should be, good to go. We've also seen just few days before election, the interim sign a very, very intense agreement with USA. It's a trade agreement, they're saying, but there are lots more things added to it than just trade and tariff. But at the same time, on the regular basis, I had to look at the people to people connect. On a daily basis, interdependence, that's India for you. And I think they understand that. There has been, and I would say that's probably going to be the issue here as to how Tariq Rahman manages the youth emotions about India. The fact that we've always supported Awami League and we've seen farcical elections and signed off on them. And now we've questioned whether it's a, fair election or not. It's a free election, everybody accepts. But a lot of Indian analysts are saying, is it fair? Is it, it isn't fair because of the circumstances. So don't forget the context.
And one important party was banned to participate.
Yes, but the last three elections, Bangladesh didn't have any other political party either. It was Awami, and I was there for January 24 elections, where I didn't even see Awamis come out to vote for Awamis, honestly. The rows were empty. This time, at least Bangladeshis wanted to vote. And almost 60% voters turnout, but I was only in Dhaka from morning till evening. huge amount of people on the roads, a different mood, a joyous mood for a change compared to the last few elections. So it is not inclusive. Yeah, accept that. But so I'm saying, there are kind of emotions, they're kind of rationale that one has to overcome at this point of time. And it's, I think, up to the Prime Minister how he manages that. We talk about this youth bulge, which is almost 50% of the population in Bangladesh today, who have these issues. I mean, the whole problem and the Awami League collapsed was on the issue of unemployment. That's a serious issue, so they'll have to address. And, so I think India can in many ways support their economic development. We've built over the last 15 years lots of, cross-border connectivity corridors, which again would be, providing dividends to both sides of the people. While on a regular basis, we have scholarships and, we have all of that. But I think I also feel that we've never connected with the youth. The government was speaking with each other, the political leaders at the highest level were speaking with each other, but somehow we were missing out on this youth bit. And, so I keep saying that they must be brought to different parts of India. They relate to Bengal, of course, because of the language and the cultural affinity, but there is so many other India that they need to see, and also where they can be part of that progress and growth. I think we really need to break that and see how, and there is, and I keep repeating this, that, Bangladesh and India will have to work together. We have to find ways as to how we can engage with them. And it is, I think, very simplistic to say that we won't have a difference with our neighbors. We have difference with everyone. It's bound to be. But we will have to overcome that and look on the positive convergence.
Look at the positive convergences, perhaps it would be safe to say that it's been a good start, the kind of outreach that India has made to this dispensation. It's early days, of course, but let me ask you this, General Sharma. Under Muhammad Yunus, Bangladesh displayed overt hostility towards India, and we saw it leaning towards Pakistan and China. That was a matter of grave concern, clearly. It is early days, but how do you look at this new dispensation under Tariq Rahman? How do you think its foreign policy is likely to reshape geopolitical alignments in South Asia? And how is that likely to impact both India's interests and regional influence?
So, you see, it's early days, but having said that, I think the what is visible, I mean, his choice of the foreign minister who was being spoken of, he was NSA earlier, he's been meeting NSA and others. He's a renowned gentleman, we know him. So the fact of the matter is that, he has selected the right people, which gives the impression of being balanced in his thinking process. Finally, everybody will understand that India surrounds Bangladesh for nearly 360 degrees. It's the largest border we got, 4,000 kilometers. The maximum rivers, all rivers flow out of India and go into Bangladesh. Where is the possibility of detachment here?
Yeah.
There's just no possibility in maritime frontier or on the lands. And there are all these states all along it, they have very intricate relationship with Bangladesh. To say that Bangladesh can develop on its own without India being involved, I think that would not be true, because it's the way the geography lays down certain things for us. Having said that, and I'm sure there are people in Bangladesh who will understand that there is this relationship which cannot be parted away. We sorted a very difficult border with Bangladesh by more give than take on the enclaves and all that we did there, including on the maritime frontier, in the islands, etc. So what we have shown large-heartedness in many ways. There are issues here. There are issues which have been stuck for quite some time, the Teesta itself and many other places, which we need to resolve it. I think there is a semblance of maturity which seems to be evident in the present government of Bangladesh. There is a great sense of maturity which has been shown by the government of India in its initial dealings in the course of last few months with Tariq Rahman himself and with the others. The foreign secretary having met the Jamaat leader in his visit out here to Dhaka. I think the attempts are genuine. The government did not make any negative noises at all. We were very prudent, we were pragmatic. And despite the fact, I'm sorry to say, the media goes overboard quite often, but we leave the media apart. I think the government, both sides, the people at the helm acted maturely, and one can only see for hope. Of course, the issues are very difficult. See, unfortunately, foreign policies for neighbors are not easily made in Delhi. They are also made by the states on which fringe that country. So there is an involvement of West Bengal. You just can't involve it. It is not a foreign policy that you can divest yourself from Assam or West Bengal, or for that matter, the northeastern states, in Tripura especially. So there is work to be done here. I, I, one should be hopeful.
Absolutely. You're quite right that, both sides have displayed maturity in recent days. But the same can't be said about Muhammad Yunus. I'll come back to you, Professor. He has been quite hostile towards India. He's made some very provocative remarks. I want to quote him as well. Among other things, he said India's northeast is completely landlocked. Its access to the ocean is completely controlled by Bangladesh. The Siliguri corridor is the only route that connects the northeast with the rest of India, and this connection passes through Bangladesh. And then he makes it worse. He goes to China and he tells Beijing to get involved in this region. Now, that obviously was, very provocative for India. And even in his farewell speech, he refers to the Seven Sisters without naming India. The man may be gone, but the issue that has been highlighted remains significant. I think we have to acknowledge that the Siliguri corridor, also referred to as the chicken's neck, is seen as a potential strategic vulnerability for India, especially given Pakistan and China's constant attempts to expand their influence in this sensitive geography. What implications do you think this has for India's national security? I want to put this question to both of you, starting with Professor Datta.
So I do agree that Professor Yunus was provocative. One doesn't know why. Also, his geography was a mess. I thought my geography was very good. He's clearly needed a lot of work on it. But that apart, I think people forget that what India's capacity is now. And to just keep raising Northeast as a vulnerable, area is really looking at it in a very flimsy way. I think we have more than ability and capacity to take care of ourselves. So just by getting, ISI people there on the borders and asking China to build that, I think, Air Force base, which, it's one of the old historic ones, which was never being developed because obviously it doesn't have the potential. So these was just unnecessary provocation, really. But I think we have to move past that. And I think what, we've seen over Tariq Rahman's, in fact, even Jamaat, the statements that they've done, and I know Jamaat is trying to reinvent itself because, it's not an entity that we've been ever comfortable to work with because of our historic baggage and all of that. But we don't know, it's too early to say whether people will change or not, or has things really said. And I think I keep saying this, that, he has to take the constituency along with him. Even if Tariq Rahman wishes the best for India, there are constituencies and layers within every nation which has a different way to deal with it. And, the scaremongering is something very typical. But as so far as our security, I think our main concern will again be because we've seen in the past how Pakistan has used Bangladesh's soil for anti-India activities. And which is a fear here again. But I just wanted to add here onto the earlier question that you'd asked. I feel Pakistan is more keen to work with Bangladesh. Bangladesh, of course, as Lt Sharma would say, that, Pakistan-Bangladesh military defense linkages were always there. That's not new. It's the political linkages that we are now worried about. But I just feel, and I want to just quote here Tariq Rahman when he returned to Dhaka on 25th, his very short speech also talked about how Dhaka needs to maintain distance between Pindi and Delhi. So I think he was saying it straight there. And, Pakistan is a nation which has nothing to offer just now. It's in the crevices themselves. And I think Bangladesh understands better than anybody. At a social level, of course, they have friends and family. That's a different matter. But I'm very hopeful and upbeat that they will not indulge in the previous practices. And I don't think they're going to give space to create that similar animosity space that had been created in the past. I think we've all moved forward, as so has Dhaka. I think Dhaka right now is a far more confident, state. again, it's as I mentioned, USA, China. I mean, I mentioned this because I always say Bangladesh is now a coveted partner of the Bengal. Everyone is wanting to work with Bangladesh. So why would Bangladesh upset that rhythm? They will work with India as much as possible, in terms of what they feel we can provide with them. And, so I mean, it's interdependent kind of economy that we hope to develop, a regional value chain that all of us we talk about, and we can think that there are possibilities many, which will again work for everybody's favor. So I really hope this time around the politics, and I think that's a point that Tariq Rahmanji is making, that the grammar of politics will change. And right away in the beginning, we've always seen Bangladeshi politicians never meet each other, very divisive personalities. This time he's gone home to meet them, both NCP, Jamaat. I think it's a great beginning. And the fact that our foreign secretary met, Jamaat chief. Again, Jamaat would always say every time I met somebody or the other, that Indians don't feel comfortable to meet us. So that has, that window's been broken now. So I think it's always there, as I said, skepticism on all sides. There'll be constituencies who don't want things to improve. We have to be cautious about that. But I also feel that I think with the good intentions, and I think every political player in Bangladesh has conveyed good intentions about working with India. I think we should build on that.
We certainly need to build on that. But on the question of Siliguri corridor, the constant threats that have emanated from Dhaka, let's certainly hope, as Professor Datta says, that changes now with a new dispensation in place. But how credible are those threats? How do you think India views it in terms of its national security?
So, Neha, you referred to China earlier. Now, look, to say China is not a South Asian country, I think will be wrong. Chinese have made tremendous inroads in each one of the neighboring countries.
Oh, yes.
Every country. To develop on themselves, they require funds, they require assistance. And if the IMF doesn't give and the World Bank doesn't give, the Chinese are ever ready to provide assistance. Even Sheikh Hasina's time, you see the Padma Bridge, or you see the Pekwa base, the BNS Sheikh Hasina made by them, or the DPR that the Chinese made for Rangpur, Dinajpur area, and the bridges, friendship bridges that they were constructing. Chinese are in a very big way in Bangladesh, and Chinese are very big way in Nepal and all other countries, maybe not so much in Bhutan. So we have to live with this. This is a given. We just can't avoid it. We don't have the kind of deep pockets that the Chinese have got. We have to adjust. Second here is that we have such a large trade with Chinese, $150 billion plus. So we can trade with the Chinese any amount, and it's rising so much every year. But we would not like our neighboring countries to deal with China. How would you expect this to happen? We go to a neighbor.
Just don't want them turning into Chinese satellites.
So, no, I don't think Chinese are looking for making satellite. Chinese are buying influence, and the influence is tremendous. And the kind of money that they plow into any of these countries, the influence is obviously normal. It's happening in Africa, it's happening in Latin America. This is what and ASEAN countries, this is what Chinese do. We have to accept it that the Chinese will be making inroads. Now,
Yeah.
despite that, if you have to make, you need to work to that end to make sure that you are also made indispensable in many ways. The second part is, you said about Siliguri corridor. Look, the threat to Siliguri corridor as a military operation, I think, is exaggerated and it's not possible. I would venture to say so, that for the Chinese to come down up from Chumbi Valley down towards Siliguri corridor will be, I think, one of the exercise in major futility. To deny an area, nowadays you don't have to go there. No? You can deny it by so many other means, by missiles, so that's one part. It's the part of leading on to insurgencies or terrorism which can be fed in through Bangladesh. Well, that's a threat which can exist anywhere in India. We had left-wing extremism in central India, 200 plus districts for so many years. They are not contiguous across to any neighboring country. So we are able to resolve it. If there's a threat exists, so be it. You work to this end. I mean, I would say that if the Pakistanis are wanting to take advantage of little better relationship with Bangladesh and push in some terrorists, okay, that's possible. But that doesn't mean that we are defending ourselves in J&K. We will do so in this area also. And to get bound and to get over anxious and worried that there is a small 22-kilometer passageway which is called Chicken Neck and all the funny names. And our Northeast, I don't think we are like Professor Sreeradha says rightly, we are India. Yeah? We are the third, getting to be third largest economy. We have a strong military. We have a strong economy. We are a nation. Why should we show a scare on our part? Yeah, so be it that there is a small channel. We'll handle it. Yeah, क्या फर्क पड़ता है?
I was so glad you're saying this, and I always, admire this, his very, very clarity on this particular, because I think you've seen not only just social media, but media, hype this up.
Okay.
And why does everybody get the impression that India doesn't have the capacity to defend our own borders? Okay, why do we need somebody else? But just a little bit on the China bit, we've seen, we call China the non-resident power in South Asia because they're kind of integrated nest that has them developed. But I must say, Bangladesh has been cautious to some extent, despite Korma Fully and all these big projects. They've never had a debt service problem with China. Unlike Maldives, unlike Sri Lanka, Nepal, everybody's fallen in that they never. So they've been able to keep that side, pretty clear. They're, of course, right now in deep economic crisis. When this is during Sheikh Hasina's time, it's not a new thing. Interim has covered to some extent. So they will need support of China for many infrastructure projects. But this is also where they need India. And just like I keep saying this, that India lends the support to Sri Lanka. And we have a Sri Lankan head of the government who was so virulently anti-India. But yeah, we are working together. Yeah. So this changes.
Or even the Maldives for that matter, from India out campaign to, engaging with us. He visited New Delhi.
How will they survive to get their people treated? You finally have to come to Kerala, na? For 20% of our tourist traffic used to come from from Bangladesh for treatment into Bengal and to the neighboring hospitals. You can't send a fellow who has got a requirement of a kidney to Beijing or Shanghai. Yeah? Finally, you have to come down to India. See, yes, it's our heart. We have to be big-hearted. Yeah, I think we get to be unilateral.
The 15 lakhs visas was also giving us a lot of commercial activities. Yeah. Bangladesh, the markets in Bengal, Kolkata for specifically, and South were flourishing because of them also. Hotels were buzzing. Look at hotels in the smaller hotels especially, they're all lying waste. So it's an interdependent situation.
Yeah, and the links are inextricable, whether anyone likes to acknowledge it or not. But, there's another aspect that I'd like both of you to focus on, starting with you, Professor Datta. Bangladesh is now entering a new phase. This is a period of transition. Do you believe that the balance of power between the civilian leadership and the military establishment could be key in determining how governance priorities are set? How do you see these dynamics playing out in the days ahead?
So what we've seen in the last 18 months that, the chief of the army has been very supportive in terms of uh, putting Bangladesh on track. I mean, he was the first one who talked about election.
Yeah.
Of course, we had Professor Yunus come up with a specific date. I saw an extremely safe environment for the voters when I was there. Everybody was out there with families, little children, with wheelchair and all of that. So essentially, people were, it was a very safe and secure environment that the security forces. So as of what we understand is that, I think the priority, as you mentioned, for the army chief would be to ensure stability. And we also, I think, India is also, I think, comfortably engaged with the, I think then Sharma may refer to that a little bit more. But as of now, we see, and I think it's not only just now, every government in Bangladesh has always had a very close engagement, quite naturally so. I think they've been another pillar of support and strength and, something which has lent stability to Bangladesh. And we've always also understood that the nature of the military has changed in Bangladesh from the earlier 1980s.
Yeah.
So we see a very different supportive role. I don't think we should be, we do a lot of, again, these hyper thinking that we often do, sitting that what if and all of that. And we were apprehending a coup again and many such, what was being said in the Indian media. So I don't think we have reasons to worry on that front. I think the military is very stable, very wanting to support this particular government. And again, as I said, we also have our own one-to-one engagement with the military. There are many exercises that we are now doing, and we are many spaces that we are engaging with them.
Yeah.
So I think I would be very, again, to repeat myself, hopeful and upbeat that we will be able to stabilize the bilateral relation.
Right. Jindal Sharma,
One more point here.
yeah, Bangladesh is no Pakistan. I think we can be very clear about that. Pakistan, they often say, is an army with a country. Bangladesh is nowhere near that. We have our own relationship with the military there. How do you see this dynamic between the civilian leadership and the military there, especially under the changed circumstances?
So if my father was a general and had become a president of my country, and my father was awarded for valor and bravery twice in 65 war and 71 war, I will remember my childhood days in the armed forces. I can't get over it. So Tariq's father was awarded twice, yeah, for bravery in 65 and 71, and he's an army brat, so is to say. And I think if the relationships go, there would be relationships which will go very far into into between him personally and the military. That's one part. And I think these are one can say these are small. These are not small issues. They are big issues, especially among army brats. And second is that we have trained with the military so many times in our life with Bangladesh. Our people have gone and done so much of training inside Bangladesh, and naturally, Pakistan is also doing it. There are issues which come up for discussion which are not very palatable. But despite having said that, we are best of friends. Even today, in fact, in many of our groups, we are in contact with most people who share their thoughts and their experiences and their anguishes to what the anxiety being shown in India, which they actually doesn't exist there. So, I don't think that there is that cleavage between the civil and the military in Bangladesh is a major issue. I don't think so. And I don't think so that the military in Bangladesh and military in India would be distant. I don't think so. We are still moving into the relationships. So let me put it this way: I don't think that military, and like you rightly said, it is not Pakistani military.
Yeah.
It's a military which is stood on its own feet. It's not a very large 10 odd divisions. It's not a very large force, but then there is substantial, and let's not over exaggerate issues between what the military can do. All this talk about coup, as Shraddha has been saying, has actually put soft people, countries.
Yeah.
We might be discussing in a TV studio, but those things being said are picked up by those people who don't like it. He said, yeah, why should you discuss an issue like this which is not likely to happen there? What happens, you can't take the same story back into India. You won't like it at all. Yeah.
This reflects a limited understanding
Yeah.
of the neighborhood.
You're right. And I think there's just been so much sort of confusion in the last 18 months under the Mohammed Yunus regime. One wasn't really sure about what exactly was going on in that country. Like you said, maybe some exaggerated narratives were set. But well, that is a thing of the past now, and Bangladesh is certainly entering the new phase. Let's talk about Nepal. The next major political development that we are likely to see in our neighborhood, Professor Datta, is of course the election that's slated to be held in Nepal on the 5th of March. This, of course, comes in the wake of the Gen Z protests that led to the ouster of the KP Sharma Oli government. How do you see the evolving situation in Nepal? Of course, needless to say, this is another election India is going to keep a very close eye on. What implications do you think this ongoing situation has for India and the region?
I think, the political players are a bit different this time. Of course, the earlier prime minister has also been part of the election campaign, I'm told. But I think, again, I sincerely hope that the political leaders have learned their lessons. Again, one of the major reasons that, one the trigger may have been those apps, but it's also a fact that there's been a huge brain drain from Nepal, especially the youth, because they had no jobs.
Yeah.
There was no work opportunity.
Unemployment and nepotism became a huge issue.
Yeah, so which is what the Nepo kids and those things that we saw. But yes, of course, there were it was a very short movement, but again a movement which is probably has an effect in the entirety of the nation, because everybody was affected in some form or other in terms of what this the kind of a merry-go-round that was happening amongst the leaders. I mean, we've seen how every few months there was another coalition emerging, and all because everybody wanted to remain in power without thinking that why are you in power for delivery to your people. I think they really missed that important bit, which is why the youth suddenly, you saw the frustration. So I sincerely hope that not only elections will be well, I'm sure will be held very well, but more importantly, the delivery mechanisms, the intentions of the government, and all of that we'll see a shift there, because I don't think they can go back to the same past play. Because once and everywhere in South Asia there's a youth bulge, and quite rightly so. Their demands are very legitimate. It's not that they're asking for things which the nation should not be in a position to. The government certainly delivery has to be there, and I think transparency again. A non-corrupt government is something which is a common refrain from Nepali youth as well as Bangladeshi youth. So I don't see why any. I mean, I would really hope that, as I said, having gone through a very short struggle, but I'm hoping the new leadership will be cognizant of the factors that led to this particular change, and there'll be better processes and I think checks and balances, which somehow was suddenly not there.
Completely missing. There was deep-seated anger and, resentment on the ground among the youth over issues of corruption, nepotism, unemployment that led to the Gen Z protests. I find it remarkable that the Prime Minister who was ousted during those protests is now actually back in the fray. We don't know who's going to win this election, but General Sharma, um, how do you see these new youth-driven political forces reshaping Kathmandu's policy towards New Delhi?
So when we talk Kathmandu, I think we should um, detach ourselves from Bangladesh. The
Mm.
chalk and cheese.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Um, you know, do we see that they getting strategic stability or structural changes in Nepal in times? We have 14, 15 prime ministers go away in 14, 15 years. There is no stability in that government, in the country at all. So do we foresee after 5th of March that there will be strategic stability and that there would be some more structural changes to bring about better governance and corruption, the issues which the Gen Z was raising?
Yeah.
I don't think it is so simple there, unlike what Bangladesh was there. Because the constitution is tiresome. It's not simple, and it has been tied in knots. So the proportional representation, which is 110 seats out of 275, actually brings up small parties. Everybody getting 3% vote gets as a MP. So it is tailored for a fractured government.
Yeah.
The constitution is tailored to make sure that there will be a fractured verdict, and there will be happenings behind the scenes just to sort out to become the prime minister. So this is the part of it. Now you mentioned Oli, there are 5 odd groupings in Nepal, separate groupings. There is one RSP, which is a 4 years old party, which is called Ravi Lamichane, and now Balin Shah. Balin Shah is one name who seems to be the future prime minister. So you remember Balinder Shah, Balin Shah. He is the mayor of Kathmandu.
The young, he made all of that. And a rapper at that. Yeah.
35 years old. I mean, if 35 is young, okay, he's young. So he
And it's by South Asian standards pretty safe to say call him young.
Absolutely. So he's one force because the youth reckon to like him, and because he's changed Kathmandu. People who have been listening in Kathmandu, the city has been transformed by him as a mayor over a period of time, and he's a rap. He used danda, but he did a good job. If you see Oli's output, Oli has right from beginning said this is wrong, Gen Z was wrong. So he has alienated himself to Gen Z today. So his UML, the advantage of UML is it is a cadre-based party. Like whatever you say, the cadre-based parties. At one time, CPM in West Bengal was a cadre-based party. BJP in India, cadre-based party. UML only is a cadre-based party. But he has alienated himself from the youth. He's made a small little organization of youth, but half-hearted. The Congress, which stands out, Nepali Congress, has now finally thrown away Sherbazu Thopa and Joba. I mean, not thrown away, sidelined him, and they made a Gagan Thapa, who's a youngster 50 years, 49 years, a relative youngster. So the parties that have moved towards youngsters versus parties which have stuck to their old guard, there are going to be little chemistry issues. But of the 275 seat assemblies, 165 are first past the post and 110 are PR. And PR, the proportional representation I land here, it's not that my party, I have to now submit a list of people who are PR. So I pick up any Tom, Dick, and my wife, my nephew, my niece, if I'm a leader, and put them in the list here. So the PR are not people who are very astute politicians or economists or something like that. They are just people who may not get elected, you put their name into PR. So the half of the assembly comes out to be people who matter not much. And there's only 165 seats which are proper, and 167, and there are 67 parties contesting. It's a muddle. At least they could have said is, okay, a party gets 5% vote, 7% vote will get commensurate proportional representation. So it is a good idea. Smaller parties will be left to. When you say 3% vote, every small party will get 3% vote from left, right, and center. It will be ready to send an MP into the assembly. There will be big problems out here. So, the constitution by itself doesn't lend itself to strategic stability in Nepal even after this. Yeah. I'm a Gurkha officer, and I would love to see stability in Nepal. But as a stand, it doesn't seem to be likely in my opinion.
Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, political instability does seem to be built into the flawed constitution of that country. What this election will throw up is anybody's guess. But again, looking at it from India's viewpoint, Professor Datta, it would be safe to say that there has been considerable external influence in Nepal, especially from China, even the United States. How does that complicate, this external influence complicate New Delhi's traditional instruments of foreign policy in Nepal?
So way back, we've seen actually some detrimental interest against India's interest. I think that has changed ever since the Republic has come. I think we do see a lot of influence in terms, again, support of infrastructure, economy, and all of that, but not when they're, I mean, overtly or deliberately working against India's interest in that sense. So India and Nepal have a unique relationship, right? Open borders like what we have. But at the same time, you often hear, but this is also only true to Kathmandu, these voices about India, because the rest of the Pahari and all that are not bothered. They have a different thing. No, but on a, I'm going to, go back a little bit. I remember when Prime Minister Modi first went to Nepal, he spoke at their parliament, and I was there a few days later. For the first time, Kathmandu was praising India, saying that we have somebody, he was talking about the growth engine, working together, very inspirational. But lo behold, another few months later, we go close the borders. So we keep sending these, very different signals. And the point that you initially started the conversation about neighborhood, even in Bangladesh, you saw we sent our foreign minister for Khalida Zia's, the former prime minister's funeral. A few days later, we throw the Bangladeshi boy out of the IPL. Domestic comparisons. But we did, and ridiculously so. And then you say that why are people so trained? Yeah, so And we keep doing these very, very funny, policies and stances, which doesn't make us very endearing entity, honestly. So, despite a lot of interdependence and the kind of support we've given Nepal over the years, they of course know about it. There's no indifference or ignorance about that. But also, then the new defense policy, maybe General Sharma may talk about that. Again, we've always, and from him and my other colleagues, that for us, those Gorkhas were a very stable and safe constituency for us. Supportive constituency, rather, right word. They still earn a lot of their, pension and everything. We've let go of that constituency. And, how does that work for a future engagement? So I'm just saying that we're not very consistent in terms of some of our engagement policies, but at the same time, external powers will always fish, right? And we are giving them the troubled waters. I think we should be careful to ensure, and this is true for Bangladesh and Nepal, that they don't move away from us. If we are going to leave the door open, they will, but let's give them things that they want. And then let's see, then you have some leverage to, discuss that and take that conversation for others. They say, no, we don't care. You do what you want. Then, of course, there'll be people and there'll be external players who are always looking for opportunities. So we have to be careful ourselves.
We have to look out for our own interests. But General Sharma, India shares long and largely porous borders with both Bangladesh and Nepal, and that does present security challenges. It also impacts our domestic politics. Assam and West Bengal, for instance, are going to polls in a few months, and illegal migration is a hugely politically sensitive issue in these states. Um, how big is the challenge of border security for India vis-a-vis Bangladesh and Nepal, in your view?
So Nepal has a porous border, all right. People can move without any kind of documentation. But that doesn't mean that the trade can move. It is not porous for trade. It is porous only for crossing people. If Nepal produces sulfate ghee for example, you can't get it in India. They can't. They can sell it to United States, to Australia, to Japan and South Korea. But they can't sell it here. At one time, the relationship was also bedded on to get a whole lot of these kids who used to come study here in, various schools, in Paul's, Darjeeling, Dehradun, etc. Those things have now weakened away. That's why you drive down nowadays in Kathmandu, you see boards, hoardings teaching Japanese language, teaching Korean language. People are now moving away to different pastures. They're not coming to India for work. People are being sought about. If you have money, you go to the United States. If you don't have money, you go to Middle East or you go to Japan and Korea. Everybody who is able-bodied is now, child is studying Japanese language and Korean language because they're not so welcome in India as they used to be earlier. So there is a change which has happened, and the aspiration, and ma'am rightly pointed out, Bangladesh also, India also, we are aspirational societies. I have a small car, I want a big car. I have a small fridge, I want a big fridge. Small flat, I want a big flat. People are aspirational. In our case, we are working to meet aspirations in India. But it's not so much happening in, say, Nepal, where people are aspirational, the whole country's youth, and they're not getting employment worth the name. So they have to now, so the maximum earnings that the Nepalese have is on remittances, and they're much sought for. In fact, to get a visa from the United States is easier from Kathmandu than from Delhi. So there is a cultural shift happening in the entire subcontinent because of the youth bulge and because of the aspirations of people. People are not satisfied with what they're getting. They want to get something more. If you're
What's more that India can offer? What are the areas in your economic and security cooperation that can help India improve its status?
So I started with saying that we are the least economically connected region in the world. This one. There is anything which is produced in any one of these countries, we are such a large nation, we can absorb it. Any amount. To make restrictions on trade and commerce, I think we need to be a little large-hearted. One issue. India. We are a large nation. As a large nation, we have larger responsibilities. if we make stricter rules and regulations for trade, we are cutting them off. Now, Sreeradha will help us out on this one, or stopping the trade from Bangladesh coming across to India, and we're using Indian ports. This is the issue which is happening here. Nepalese have been seeking to get out of Hooghly for a very long time. They said that Hooghly become very difficult for us. So they wanted different ports. And last year, after a long time, we have allowed them to trade from Mudra and Dhamra. So, this could have been done 10, 15 years ago, but it has been done. We have to deliver. Chinese deliver. If they say we make a 14 roads from Tibet joining up with Nepal, some of them coming down to Terai, to Lumbini, they will make the character change into Nepal. Our delivery has to be good. We can't match the Chinese, but we have to reach a level to say that we can do good work in generating hydroelectricity. Arun 1, Arun 2, Arun 3 took so much of time in Nepal to construct. The Pancheshwar Dam on Kali Nadi stone was laid in 96. It is just a stone still.
But we built the oil pipeline within the time.
But we built a fantastic oil pipeline within 2 years. And we made a fantastic railway line in 2 years connecting Bihar to Nepal. Because, that blockade, the oil and all that got blocked. So it got, this thing has changed because the pipeline now coming up across from Bihar, from I think Barauni, and the railway line. So now we should connect the railway line to Kathmandu before the Chinese make the railway line from Shigatse to Kathmandu.
Exactly.
So we'll deliver. So once we start delivering, start thinking. And if the Nepalese don't like the trade and transit treaty, which they have been saying we don't like it, उसका नाम बदल के कुछ और रख लेते हैं. I mean, let's reach out somewhere.
And I cannot compromise, reimagine. No, we don't have to compromise on our core interest and things like that. Each one should look out for each other, themselves first and then each other. But I think we need to be a little more imaginative, a little more, as you say, a little more generous, also a little more thoughtful. We don't think about their needs, and what every political leader has to finally stand in front of his own people, right? And if you want to look as if that you're taking a bias towards a particular nation, how are you going to answer for that?
So this actually brings me to my final question. Since you're talking about how India needs to be more imaginative, more generous, the question that I want to put to both of you as we wrap up this conversation is this, starting with you, Professor Datta. What are the biggest lessons for India from Bangladesh and Nepal in terms of its neighborhood policy? And how can India reclaim its neighborhood, especially given China's hegemony and relentless expansionism, which obviously pose a threat both to India's interests and to regional stability?
So we've always heard about this accusation that India put all its basket in one egg, which is true, the Sheikh Hasina basket. But I will also say this, that Sheikh Hasina was very particular that India should not reach out to other political entities. This was so, it's not that they didn't meet, there was one odd meetings here and there, but not the way we could pick up the phone. And like what he's mentioned, that, what students studying here. So we have so many contemporaries who've been to Williams, who's been to Mayo. Now that group is diluted. So after my generation, the next generation are studying different places, not India so much. It's not the favored destination anymore. So one is look at that a little bit more, because this is very important where you have the ability to pick up the phone. Of course, leaders do that at their own level. That's separate. But even the society, the civil society needs to have that outreach, because people were not sure what was happening which way, both in Nepal and in Bangladesh. So I think one is, of course, the government relationship has to change, but also look at and see, and they'll say everything that government does is for people. No, it often doesn't translate, and also perceptions are very, very root, kind of, how should I say, the narrative has been very difficult. We need to address that. So if somebody is doing this India out campaign, check why it's doing it. Just don't say it's a Chinese outpost or something like that. There are probably other ground reasons as to why that has happened. Even now, just now, whether it's Bangladesh, whether it's Nepal, whether it's Maldives, we always put the blame on somebody else. But true, we need to introspect a little bit ourselves as to why they think that some of the agreements were one-sided. One thing I keep saying that about water. it's a mental cover that Bangladesh has. And I keep arguing that it's not about the Cusack flow anymore. It's about agro patterns, about many other things that we could discuss. But somehow we've not been able to do that despite promising on the joint communique. Similarly for Nepal, there's so many things. I mean, the delivery is a huge issue that has changed. Now we've signed this. Bangladesh and Nepal has signed an energy deal, which is with, of course, India being on board. We have done so many meetings on BBIN, seamless traffic and all of that. Nothing ever worked out. Why? Please, and I remember when we were discussing, Bhutan has this reservation for environment reason. Nepal had issues again recently, again because of their own cartel of truckers who were not happy. All of that is a ground situation which we were not cognizant of, and we were just thought we'll be able to deal with it or handle it. But we weren't able to. So even today, from I don't know what last 25 years, we are discussing BBIN with nothing moving. So like, we keep discussing that it's the least integrated region, but I think there are ways we can address it.
Same question for you, General Sharma, as we wrap up this conversation. What are the big lessons and key takeaways for India from Bangladesh and Nepal as far as its neighborhood policy is concerned?
So, one is that we are a youthful neighborhood, and it is obvious that the youth are in the move, and they, as they say, Gen Z is an unsatisfied generation. So, the entire region has to be very mindful of the fact that the youth aspirations have to be met, and as a region. Otherwise, this is one big thing that we are sitting on. Second is that, look, we had very big problems with Sri Lanka some 4-5 years ago, and then we had a government which came in after the elections in the Sanaike, and we have made great changes there, and unilateral changes. It was not made with major amount of noise and nothing, but we did fantastic amount of work, and we have good relations also with Maldives. The question is you will always get some government in the neighborhood which is inimical. We are not not happy with them. The strength of a nation like India comes out when you are able to work with governments where people who are not with you. That's the strength. To work with best of friends is the easiest thing. You don't require to be a diplomat for that. To work with difficult people and both sides of the aisle is where is the strength comes out for a larger nation, and that's where it matters. So you may get a government in Nepal which you may not like or may like it, yeah, and they may have spoken atrociously earlier. So be it. You still have to work because the neighbors are not changing anyway. So that's a big lesson that comes out is that, even if sometimes later Tariq Rahman says something which you may or may not like it, and so be it. Politics has got all lot of ideas. You don't have to respond to each one of these issues, and move away with this, move on with this. And similarly is true for Nepal and even Myanmar. See, you don't even know who's governing Myanmar. You have to work with every party. You have to work with Arakan Army, with Kachins, with Chins, and with the junta. So, you have to learn the art of working with everybody.
I just add here, I think we used to have a policy of having several layers of dialogue. And I don't mean 1.2 track. I don't, several layers of dialogue within the civil society, which gives us access and ability to understand their thinking, their desires, and all of that, which we somehow seem to be missing in the neighborhood these days.
So perhaps a better, stronger outreach is the need of the hour, better understanding and awareness.
South Asian economic market, we require to have the potential. All of us buy oil. Let's make a cartel of buying oil between our countries. We will make a cartel. We will dictate the price to Saudi Arabia, to many other countries. We are all buyers, yeah. We can't combine together to say make an organization. If we do not get economically integrated, we will not be able to develop as a country.
Also, what
Ah,
to say?
it will create leverages also, and we'll have the strength. You talk to, you can make a leader of the expert petroleum fellow in Sri Lanka. Okay, he leads the way from the entire region on issues of petroleum. It doesn't have to be Indian, right?
Yes.
And maybe many other issues rise, jute, so many things. Yeah, we just have to create the South Asian common market with or without SARC.
Yeah.
SARC, if we don't get it right, the Chinese will make a SARC in a year or two. Will they control? They'll have all the other countries as part of the Chinese SARC talking in Chengdu or Kunming or one of these places. They're already doing something on this score.
India needs to seize the
Formalize, all right. The conversations have opened. They're likely to formalize it. We hope.
Yeah, so India needs to seize the opportunity and do it now without delay. Well, Bangladesh has had an important election. India is hoping to improve its ties with that country. Nepal is the next one. Needless to say, India will be watching it very, very carefully. On that note, thank you to both of you for joining me on Deep Focus. It's been lovely talking to you. Hope you enjoyed this episode of the CRF podcast, Deep Focus, where we talked about the big churn in India's neighborhood with a special focus on Bangladesh and Nepal. Do like, share, and subscribe to the CRF YouTube channel and look out for our next episode. Bye for now.